Welcome back again. You're still watching us here on Nile Cruise, and religious tourism is the oldest type of tourism all over the world. Religion has a significant importance in the lives of the adherents and has a substantial impact on the daily life of most people. Every religion would always leave behind it a group of relics and heritages who would adhere to visits just because they are having a sort of a spiritual connection to the place, and other religions specifies their visits to such a worthy place. And that's why we see that when people decide to travel around the world and visit new countries, it's not just the heritage and the traditions, the food and the streets and the buildings, but there's always something religious left behind, the spirituality about a particular era of a certain messenger or a period of time that people would like to go and take a look at. To discuss more about religious tourism, we are very much delighted to have joining us here on Nile Cruise Dr. Mahmoud Farouk, a tourist guide. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you, Dr. Mamdouh, for being with us. And as you said, Yasmin, religious tourism is an important part in the lives of everyone. It's been there throughout the course of history. If you take Muslims, for example, every Muslim has to go to Mecca, for instance, to perform the pilgrimage and Hajj. And if we talk about Christians and Jews, of course, they have many places, especially here in Egypt, particularly with prophets Moses and Jesus having visited and lived here in Egypt, and that also is something to see for Muslims as well, not just Christians and Jews. Dr. Mamdouh, how important is religious tourism in Egypt?
First of all, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We have started a new year, and the Mahdi Church, or Church of Mahdi, is one of the most important point that the Jesus and the Holy Family passed by and riverbank and this time. So we have to define the definitions of tourism, of religious tourism. Religious tourism is a type of tourism. It's called faith tourism, that the individual or the group of people visit a holy place. That is depend on spiritual connections, not depend on a leisure or fun or to get a culture, but in how to be related with that place. The tourism in the world, the religious tourism, depend on the movement from the other each country, and the high rate of the visitors of the world to 300 million every year visit all the holy and the holy places all over the world, not the Muslim and the Christians and the Jews. Okay, but in Egypt we have to concentrate and focus on the most sites in Egypt that we are lucky that the Holy Family based in Egypt and stayed in Egypt for 3 years, and we have 26 points as station points. The Holy Family, the Virgin Mary and her infant Jesus and Joseph. Okay,
26 points.
26 points. But we can mention 10 of them, and we have a lot of story and the miracle had happened at this station.
How many of these are being visited, Dr. Mamdouh, at the moment? Of the 26 points.
How long have you?
No, how many of them are being visited?
Because there are a lot of
tourist destinations.
Yes, and some of them are not known.
26 places, 26 governments, and 10 government in Egypt. Started from the northern Sinai, headed to Tel El Farma, the eastern gate of Egypt. So they headed to Tel Pasta, the government or the city, okay, and Samanud, Matariya, Dir al-Muharraq, Asyut, Samanud, Pilbis. Yes, I will mention it originally, but we have to mention that Egypt has various locations of the religious tourism in Egypt.
Okay, so going back again maybe to the question that Muhammad mentioned earlier, if we're going to talk about the most visited religious places, what are they currently, as a tourist guide, do you annually sit and start of renovating and changing plans, possibly adding new sites, changing destinations order? How does it happen? I mean, definitely the list is not going to stay there for good. Every year there's a new plan. So tell us about that.
Okay. The rate or the number of the visitor every year is changing. Okay, according to the facilities of the places or the secure of the places in the country. In Egypt, we have a lot of different kinds. Okay, we have, for example, in India, Kumbh Mela is a religious place in India. 2,300,000 of visitors visited this India every year. Okay, and we have in Brazil and in Mexico. There are a lot of the sites of the religious tourism in these places. So we have the Muslims, Kaaba al-Musharrafa, or the Holy Kaaba. Okay, and we have in Palestine the West Wall. Okay, and the Nativity Church in Beit Lahm. Okay,
there's the Vatican, of course. How can we forget that?
Yes,
Definitely.
and the Vatican. Yes, it is the capital of Christianity. Okay, but we have to focus nowadays in the religious tourism, because the government launched some initiatives to make a Holy Family route in Egypt to be example for all the world.
Yes, and of course it's interesting you mentioned that. Of course, the religious tourism is not just confined to Islam, Christianity, or Judaism. You mentioned that there is, of course, the Buddhist sites, the temples, and so on, and in Asia, in India, and
they renovate that as well, Muhammad.
Yeah,
like, let's say the Batu Cave in Malaysia just started coloring in rainbow colors the stairs. The stairs are hilarious. They have to like climb 2,000 stairs to get up there. Now that they're colored, this is something that is the whole social media was talking about recently. Yeah.
And Doctor, I wanted to talk about again the places that are the 26 points you mentioned that are connected to the Holy Trail of the Holy Family. I want to know how many of these 26 are available to the public now. How many of these are indeed visited by tourists?
Facilities and services, roads, infrastructure
and how
to get
many
to them.
still need preparation, and what are you doing in your tours?
We have 6 or 7 only in Egypt. It is accessible to be visited in Egypt.
Let's first talk
we
about
can
that.
mention we can mention Wadi Natrun, the Valley of Natrun. We have the Moor Monastery and the churches in there. The Holy Tree in Matareya, the Holy from Mariam. We can mention the Old Cairo. We have in Old Cairo church, Abiserga Church, that the Holy Family stayed for 3 months inside this as
a refuge.
Refugees. We can mention also. We can mention Deir al-Muharraq, or the monastery of Deir al-Muharraq in Asyut. 7 or 6 is available or accessible to be visited.
So what are we doing with the other 20 or so
the government intended to make some facilities to offer some service according to the route of the Holy Family. We have to put some the service point like music, some selling, marketing, every available or every accessible things that the tourist feel that he's secure and he needs everything, and it's available for him.
Yes. Now, when I mentioned a couple of moments ago about this changing of schedule and adding new sites to religious type of tourism, and apart from the holy trials, there are new mosques and churches, for instance, that are being built. Like, for example, in a couple of days, we're expecting the inauguration of the biggest cathedral in the Middle East at the new administrative capital. Also, during that same period, the biggest mosque, Al-Fatih Mosque, in the new administrative capital. How can such new religious places with, of course, their capacity size and their modern building infrastructure can be used as an additional to the schedule or trip to tourism, and particularly religious tourism?
Yes, it's a very important question. How to make a harmony between the modern structure around the site or the archaeological site or the holy site. Okay, this is very important. It depends on how to make a harmony from the color and the units around this holy site. Like this church, the site church is one of the most important points that the Holy Family built here in River Bank. We have some here in El Maadi, or this is the main route. We have some restaurants, bathrooms, market for selling some souvenirs.
Yes.
We need that. We need to establish or erect a market that is available to make a shopping movement and around this place, but it's not affect badly on the appearance of the holy sites.
Yes. Dr. Mamdouh, could you tell us about the characteristics of the visitors who visit religious tourist sites in general? And generally speaking, are there foreigners or Egyptians?
Both of them. Both of them. But in Egypt, we depend on the out foreigners or the out tourism. We have to bring the tourism from their country. Okay, we have 1 million of Christians, like Saudi Arabian. We have the pilgrimages to Makkah al-Mukarramah or Kaaba. We have to make so accessible and facilities in Egypt. The economical side in Egypt, okay, depend on tourism. So we have to make some program, different program, amazing program that attract a new style or new type of tourist. He would visit Egypt and to enjoy with a spiritual connections and make shopping and make everything in Egypt.
Yes, Doctor. Now, as Mohammed correctly said, putting or attracting the new types of tourism and tourists in terms of certain characteristics. This also brings to my mind the fact that alone when Pope Francis, Pope of the Vatican, visited Egypt, he did also announce to add the holy sites here to the trip of the religious trial. Again, that on itself is going to attract new people who would want to come and follow the whole trip of Jesus Christ from his place to his birth until where he, during his visit and long year stay in Egypt, for instance, which was not something that was so popular in that context before that announcement by the Vatican.
Like I said, before or now, this, we have to focus or shed more lights on nowadays, okay, with modern days. In the past, we forget it because some systems, some tourism movement is not ready to make some more facilities or more development in tourism. But when the Pope Vatican visited Egypt and announced that the most of the millions of Christians to visit Egypt is a good idea. It is a good initiative in Egypt. We have to make some the conference on conventions in Egypt according to the Christianity. We have some exhibitions in Egypt, one God and its religions. Okay, the Ministry of Antiquities and the Ministry of Tourism made some exhibitions like that. Exhibitions called One God and the Three Religions.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thank you very much, Dr. Mamdouh Farouk. It's been a pleasure and it's been informative. Glad to have had you here. Dear viewers, Yasmin and I will be back shortly to continue Nile Cruise. First, the cruise quiz with Abir Mitwell.